Welcome, everyone, to Mennonite Church Canada's first ever solar panel. And no, it's not a typo. It's my little joke that some people have laughed about and some people have not. But I stand by it. I think it's funny. I think it's awesome that we are gathered to have a solar panel. So thank you so much for coming, for joining us. And for those of you who are bringing your stories, thank you for bringing your stories. And for those of you who are bringing your questions, thank you. Those of you who have brought listening ears, thank you. We need all of these things. So welcome here. And I'm looking forward to this next hour and a half with you. My name is Sandy Plett. I'm the Climate Action Coordinator for Mennonite Church Canada. And it is so great to be together in a Zoom room with people from across this nationwide family of faith. Thank you for coming. And to those of you who are viewing this conversation, which is recorded today, February 26, 2025, we welcome you as well to this conversation. Thank you for tuning in. We want to begin with an acknowledgement of the land that we are on. And so let's put our feet on the ground and consider what is beneath us. We come to this virtual land, or this virtual room, from lands west and east, north and south, held together by our relative water, the Salish Sea of the West and the Oneatorio, the Lake of Shining Waters, which flows east into the big waterway, Kaniatara Wenene. We acknowledge these lands from water to water. Their soils are alive, powerful in spirit and mystery. The story of this land is lived by a myriad of nations, a few of which are Anishinaabe, Dene, Cree, Dakota, Mi'kmaq, Coast Salish, Saugeen Ojibwe, Odawa, Haudenosaunee, Métis, and Mississauga, the Potawatomi, and the Miami, if we have guests with us from south of the border. We join this story and seek to live in right relations with all of life where we are. Our purpose this evening is twofold: to strengthen our connections to one another across this family of faith, which we are doing by looking at each other, by sharing our stories, and learning from each other. Another purpose is to provide an opportunity for congregations to encourage one another in choosing more sustainable ways of functioning as communities, focusing on the practical aspects, like things like heating and cooling and lighting, in this case, powering our buildings. These practical pieces of church life often go unnoticed until something goes wrong. And we are so glad here to pay attention to the nuts and bolts of how we keep our buildings running in ways that reflect our faith and our response to God's call to care for creation. So thank you for being here. We also acknowledge that all is not right with the world. The interconnected crises of intensifying weather events, human greed, war, and the unimaginable suffering caused by these things around the planet, these crises can be overwhelming. We sit with our humanness in these moments. We are complicit as far as we are limited by our circumstances, location, and imagination. And yet we are invited to rise up with the spirit of life and resist, to take action, to raise our voices for justice and our hands to be used for healing. As we focus in on our topic for this evening, let us remember that these efforts for efficiency are connected to and critical parts of our response to these crises as a faith family. We need all our gifts to be brought forward, examined, and offered to build the kingdom of God. And that includes our buildings, our bills, and our energy use. I am so grateful to be part of a community with so much expertise and practical knowledge and experience around energy efficiency improvements. May God be with us in our conversation here tonight. This evening will roll out as follows. We will hear from our 5 panelists about solar projects in their home congregations. That's first. Then we'll invite the panelists, if they have responses to each other's questions, to do that. And then we'll open the floor for questions and discussions from the whole group. At the end of the conversation, I'll share a teeny tiny bit about the Mennonite Church Canada Emissions Reduction Grant and a few other Mennonite Church Canada initiatives. And then we will say goodnight. So that's what we're up to. So if we are ready, I think we'll begin with our stories. Our first storytellers are Brenda and Wayne McDonald. And this is the little intro I wrote, and I actually wondered afterwards if this was accurate. I said, in Saskatchewan, there is a lot of sun. Electricity typically comes from coal plants in Saskatchewan, which is fairly dirty energy. Is that true? Yes, it is. Yeah, I thought so. I'm from Manitoba, but I'm hearing about all these things. I'm learning. So how did Wildwood decide to install panels, and how did that story unfold? Take it away, Brenda and Wayne.
Okay, thank you. I guess our story began in 2017 when we studied every creature singing. And out of that came this idea about self taxing ourselves.
Sort of a carbon tax.
Carbon tax, that's the word. And we talked a little bit about, what would we do if we collected from our self-induced carbon tax at that time? And so we talked about, well, maybe we could invest in solar panels. And then through this discussion, someone said, well, why would we do that? Why wouldn't we just get them? And so
I think there was some talk about investing in the Saskatchewan Solar Co-op.
Yes, which resides in Saskatoon. And okay, where was I again?
About investing in
co-op. Oh, yes. So then we started looking into what kinds of ways we could do this and who would sponsor a project like this. And in March of 2018, we had a little information session with somebody who was ready to facilitate this building solar panels for us. And that was March. We didn't feel like we could just ask the church to make a budget for this. And so we just invited people, if they were interested, to invest some money. And I think it was by summer of that same year that we had enough money to invest in solar panels. So we got this guy to come in, and Wayne has actual facts to go with this. And I found out today how many panels we have, but now I've forgotten. So go ahead, Wayne.
Well, I have some of the boring facts. We decided as a group, we had a sort of not really a congregational meeting, but a meeting of interested people one evening, and had a remarkable number of people with a real interest. And we decided to go ahead with a 10 kilowatt system, which in our case works out to be about 30 panels. And at the time, it was estimated that would be about 61% of our total electrical needs. Sandy, I sent Sandy some slides so she could post. I'm not sure which one she's going to put up, but
all right, is that the right one?
Well, sure. There's two of them that are sort of siblings. So our administrative person put this together. Clearly, on the 4-year total, we didn't get to 60%. Part of that was that for about a year, or better part of a year, unknown to us, half of our panels were not working because of a glitch. That was repaired, and so we lost a significant amount of generation. But so it's going to be more than 40%, but it's less than the anticipated amount. The next slide, I think, will show that what
saving.
Right. So that shows our actual net metering rebate. The Saskatchewan government ended the one-to-one net metering rebate or net metering rebate program in November of the year that we installed the panels, but we continue to have the benefit of that. We got a 20% rebate too, so it was about $20,000 to do this. We've invited people in the congregation who want to know more about the real-time generation of our solar installation to talk to me, and I would get them enrolled in the app so they can monitor real time. But there's about 4 people in our church who monitor it now. So if there's ever a glitch or a problem, we should be aware of it right away instead of waiting half a year. The third slide, I think I sent you, Sandy, shows just a screenshot of what one of the pages of the app looks like. So you can see that you can do the comparative analysis, and for data geeks, it's kind of interesting to pick this apart, and there are a number of different ways of looking at the different pages on the app. But the one that speaks easily to us is the environmental benefits, the number of kilograms of CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions saved by the solar panels, and the equivalent of trees. This was from a few weeks ago, but anyways, you get a sense. That's good, Sandy. So you get a sense of the benefit of this, and because solar panels are a real expression of our values, we had hoped that we would be able to show this to the public by having the solar panels mounted on a part of our roof that would actually be exposed or front the street. That didn't make sense in terms of solar collection. And so really, we are very humble at Wildwood, and no one knows that we have solar panels. If they drive by, they don't see that. But I think most people in the church know. Anyways, there you go, a brief overview. And I think we've gone past our 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. That was 5 minutes very well spent. I appreciate that. If any of you have questions for Brenda and Wayne, write them down and write down who the questions are for so that later on you remember who you were going to ask your questions of. We're going to go right on to Herb, Herb from First Mennonite in Edmonton. Go ahead, Herb. Oh, my question. First Mennonite in Edmonton considered a lot of options for reducing its energy use. Can you tell us some of these considerations and how you ended up choosing solar? Oh, you're muted. Yep.
I was trying to be quiet before.
We
What do
got
we say about people making comments? Okay, thanks, Sandy. Yeah, so what Sandy has asked is that tell the story of First Mennonite Church's journey and the process that we followed to reduce our energy use, and how did we decide to eventually end up with solar panels. So that's kind of the story that I'm going to be telling a little bit. So first of all, I think the one critical thing is that what I think is very important, very critical about our journey is that it ensured our success was, number one, is that our congregation was fully supportive of the process to reduce our energy use. First Mennonite Church believes it is critical that we all do our part to reduce our environmental footprint. We all do that both at church and we do that at home. Like there's many people that have their own solar panels. We do composting. We do everything we can to reduce our overall footprints. And the other thing is that First Mennonite, we also supported the initiative that we undertook here in Edmonton, both in spirit and also they came forward financially, which was an amazing financial support by our members. The second item was that we have a stewardship committee, which there's some great leadership there and the members who helped guide First Mennonite's vision and the path forward to reduce our overall energy use. And we have technologists, we have engineers, so we have a lot of, and builders and contractors, we have a lot of expertise, and that expertise was invaluable in the process we went with. So our church, when we started this process, like First Mennonite was built in 1997. And at that time, even then, we took some initiatives. Like, for example, we increased the insulation in the building over and above what was in the building code. As an example, little things like that, just to be a little more prudent. Like that was 25 years ago, before it was popular, I guess, or it was the thing to do. But we did that. And so our process that we followed here, it was an amazing story. Actually, in February of 2018, the committees we started with an energy audit and a management plan. So the purpose was to identify areas to optimize the energy savings and provide payback estimates. And those payback estimates were done in years. We didn't look at what are the carbon impacts or carbon footprints of each one of the options, but we did look at payback in years to make sure that we were making the right decisions. We proceeded not exactly as per the plan, but we ended up actually in a better place because, again, because of maybe the technical capability of the stewardship committee is we made some changes to the plan, and the end result was it was more beneficial from an environmental point of view. So that was in 2018. 2019, we installed some LED bulbs in our sanctuary. So that was the first step we took. And so then there was a bit of a gap, and it had to do with fundraising and things like that. But in 2021, we proceeded with installing high efficiency furnaces and a hot water tank. So you can sort of kind of see the theme going through here, that we're following this management plan kind of, but we've got a number of things that we're grabbing the low hanging fruit to start with, is I guess what the best way to describe that. So, but prior to proceeding, the congregation at one of the congregational meetings asked, is this the best process? Should we be installing high efficiency furnaces and a hot water tank? Or should we be looking at something like geothermal? So the stewardship group, we went back and we did a fairly detailed economic analysis comparing high efficiency furnaces with geothermal. Geothermal ended up looking at was twice the cost and had a payback of over 35 years. So didn't look that attractive. Secondly, the carbon emission reduction model that we undertook, we developed a carbon emission model for it, indicated that the CO2 reduction was 20% for going with high efficiency furnaces versus 21% for geothermal. So the issue and the reason for that, for everyone's information, is that the geothermal, of course, you've got all the heat pumps and things like that, which significantly increases your overall electric demand. And by the way, going back to what Brenda and Wayne were saying, Alberta was on coal, but now we're on a much more efficient process. All the plants have been converted to natural gas in Alberta, so the footprint of the power generation plants in Alberta is significantly lower. I think it's one fifth or 1/8 of what it was before when they were coal. So we've made that progress in Alberta. So when we look at the carbon emission reduction model that we developed, we looked at natural gas. Anyway, we went on, we looked at it. So what we found as part of the calculation is that solar became a very good process to reduce the carbon emissions. And that was part of this analysis we found. And we found that we would be able to reduce the carbon emissions by 50% versus the 21% for the geothermal. So we made the decision that we were going to go with solar. So the next process in 2022, we installed 50-year high efficiency shingles because our shingles were 25 years and were a little long in the tooth. So we had to replace the shingles because we didn't want to have problems once we put solar panels on the roof. So we have a 10-year full replacement, 35-year prorated commercial warranty on the shingles. So they should last the life of the building and the shingle and the solar panels. In 2023, we proceeded with the solar project. We installed 120 solar panels with a capacity of 66 kilowatts. We went with the commercial grade solar panels because there's less degradation of the panel itself, and they last longer, a minimum of 35 years. So again, we're trying to not just look at the low cost of things, but we're also trying to think of the life cycle cost of items and the footprint that would occur. So that's what we did with that. We had to submit a microgeneration report and justify our overall demands, and this was right in the middle of COVID, so we argued quite rigorously that we had to use the demands prior to COVID because, of course, everybody's demands were lower. So we completed the solar panels by September of 2023, and only in only a year and a half, and we had the same kind of presentation that what Wayne was showing there, that little model that you can download off of a website. We actually have a laptop sitting in our foyer that anybody walking in can see the results of our solar panels. But in a year and a half, with 2 winters in that period of time, we achieved a $10,500 surplus from electricity generation, which of course we consume during the winters. We reduced our overall emissions by 36,200 kilograms of CO2, which in our case was equivalent to 1,081 trees planted. So very significant. And of course, we're continuing on. This was done in 2023. We installed 100 LED lights in high use areas in 2023. In 2024, we continued with 6 high pressure sodium wall packs. We replaced those, and we also replaced the parking lot lights in 2024. So in 2025, beyond 25, 26, as funds become available, we will continue with it. So it took us 5 years to get the solar panels in place. However, as you can see, we achieved many other things to help First Mennonite in Edmonton here reduce our overall environmental footprint. And it's due to the amazing support of the congregation and the hard work of the stewardship committee that we were able to achieve all of this. So it was a big project, and we're very proud of what we've achieved. So that turned it back to you, Sandy.
Thank you, Herb. That is an exciting story as well. I feel like I would love to give you all like 15 minutes or more because there's so much to say, but that was a great summary. Thank you. And those of you who have questions for Herb, write them down. Our next guest is Peter Sawatsky, and I just have to start by saying happy birthday, Peter. It's Peter's birthday. Sometimes it takes, and Peter is calling in from Fort Garry Mennonite Fellowship. Well, that's not where he's sitting, but that is his congregation, Fort Garry Mennonite Fellowship in Winnipeg. Sometimes it takes a whole committee to move the congregation to a decision and an action. Sometimes it doesn't. Tell us how things happened at Fort Garry Fellowship in Winnipeg.
Well, thank you, first of all, for organizing this. I think it's it's been a long time coming. We've had our solar panels for approximately 4 years, and exactly one church has asked me about the solar panels. So this is, and I didn't know about all of you, the rest of you. I'm very impressed that all these churches have solar panels. We didn't start as a committee. As somebody wrote, some wise person wrote that things start with one person. And I have to admit that I was that one person in our church. I was part of a Mennonite Creation Care Network, and they had all kinds of, it's an American, mostly American. And they always had all this, these ideas and projects that people were doing. And there's a church in, I think in Philadelphia, that was putting solar panels on the roof of their church. So I looked at our church. We have a church building that has 4 sides. It's like a pyramid, quite high. The middle is more than 30 feet high. So I thought, oh, this looks like we could just slap some solar panels and we could save the planet. So I talked to some people, and some said, too expensive. People said, that's too much bother. And then I talked to one of the oldest members in our congregation, and she said, Peter, go for it. So I talked to our the chair of our planning committee, which is like a church council. He didn't commit himself, but he said, I'll talk to the planning committee. And they, I wasn't even there. I didn't present anything. They said, yes, go ahead, give us an idea what you can do. So, but you have to form a committee. So it was very good because I could choose the committee. So I chose people who who thought like I did and who helped me along. So we started the process, looked at different contractors, and there too the committee chose the contractor I wouldn't have chosen. They liked somebody better than I did, and we were very fortunate because that company actually left Manitoba after a few years, so we couldn't even have used them. So the rest of it, we interviewed a young man. We thought he was an engineer, but really he was the son of the owner of the company. Came in his beater car, long hair, I mean, didn't look very impressive, but we all liked him. He was very honest, but it was a smaller company which they had done some solar panels out in the country, but none in the city. But we said, let's do it, and he went and did all. He did all the work. I know nothing about electricity. I know very little about organizing this kind of stuff. I'm just interested in well, I always said saving the planet. So he got going. He did all the permit work, or he tried anyway. So our biggest problem really was, well, okay, how do you pay for it? It was $60,000, 56 panels. So we decided we should borrow money from ourselves. We have a fund, a building fund. So we borrowed money from ourselves to pay for this. If we could do this for a dishwasher for $40,000, then we could do it for solar panels. So that's what happened. The contractor did all the work. The biggest problem we had was with the city and with Hydro, Manitoba Hydro. Their rebate was 1/3. The cost was $60,000. They paid approximately $20,000. So the city just put roadblocks in everywhere I went. Everywhere, where the contractor said, I can't get a permit. They won't give me a permit. They're just asking for more and more proof that this building is good and all that kind of stuff. So I phoned up the counselor where the church is located. In 2 days, we had a permit, and things went on. And then Hydro was the day that we were supposed to get our rebate. There was a big demonstration in the city of young people protesting climate change or whatever. And I got an email saying, your runway you're past your runway. You won't get the rebate. You won't get the $20,000. It's too late. So I sent them, and I'm usually very quiet and very kind. I think I'm kind. So I emailed Hydro and said, look at this. This is what you're doing. And they changed their mind. There were other people, it wasn't only ours. There are other projects too where they changed their mind. And so they paid us the $20,000. But there were other costs that were unexpected. We needed to buy a bi-directional meter, which was $500. All of a sudden, the city wanted to have an engineer's report. An electrical engineer had to sign a paper. The one who did all the work wasn't good enough. So we paid another $1,700 for somebody to sign a paper. So I don't know, they all put roadblocks, city, the Hydro. It was very disturbing, very disappointing that they didn't understand what's going on. Also, we have no idea how much money you're saving or anything. It's as far as I can see, in 4 years, we've maybe saved $9,000, but that's only my calculation, and you need a PhD in mathematics to figure this one out. So the problem is, as far as I can see, nobody knows about it. So I'm so impressed that there are all these people from these churches who have solar panels. We need to get the word out a little more. So Sandy, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for telling your story, Peter. I love it that the guy came in his beater car and you all liked him, and that was that.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that story. Next we have Glenn Woolner, and Glenn is from First Mennonite in Kitchener. So Glenn, you can wave and unmute. This is my question for Glenn. Projects like putting in solar panels or other large scale and expensive projects can be daunting for individual congregations to tackle. Can you tell us about Cru the initiative in the Kitchener area that enabled several congregations to move to solar altogether. Go ahead, Herb. I'm not Herb, sorry, Glenn.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's interesting. Back in 2004, I was part of a group that incorporated as a not-for-profit to promote conservation and renewable energy. And it was called Community Renewable Energy Waterloo, meaning Waterloo Region, and which is a combination of Kitchener and Waterloo and surrounding area. And what we really wanted to do is work with lay people and help them to understand how they could be part of, fighting climate change, make a difference in their own homes and in their community. And so we'd have events at the library once a month. We had once a month movie nights. We went into schools and did a 5-week program with grades 5 and 6 around conservation and renewable energy. All those kinds of things to connect people, but we came up with an idea how we could collect larger numbers into doing something visible and then help share that with the community with the reasons why they did this. And the obvious one was working with faith communities, and I'm Mennonite, obviously. And a number of our crew members were, or on our board actually, were Mennonite as well. And great participation within the community as well in terms of what we did and the volunteers that came forward. But we came up and designed a proposal to go to the city of Kitchener and ask for a grant that would help us make renewable energy visible in the community, and then get the broader community involved and engaged, and maybe doing that on their own homes. And the most visible one is obviously solar. So the proposal had to do with working with 10 faith communities, churches and schools. And the reason we chose faith communities, that there would be an anchor point as to the motivation around this, why we do this. So the proposal was that we would actually engage these faith communities, teach them about renewable energy and conservation, climate change, what they can do about it, and help them understand that once they do something, people might question why they did it, and to be prepared to anchor that into their faith and their rationale behind this. So we actually ended up doing this. It was limited to the city of Kitchener because they were putting up the money, and somebody said, well, why not include Waterloo? But we've had this, we're kind of sister cities, with Kitchener being the elder. And Waterloo likes to kind of hitch itself to us and follow along, and but they don't want to share the cost. So the city was very adamant we can't include them. We have to stay within the boundaries of the city of Kitchener. So that's what we did. We ended up with 2 schools, Christian Reformed Junior School and Rockaway Mennonite Collegiate, and then the others were congregations. And all of them, at that time, we were under the microfit program. All of them got in on the Point A2, which was designed to give a 10% return on investment. So as the cost of the systems dropped, then of course the tariff dropped as well. And as it dropped, people were all upset because they said, now we're getting less. And actually they were paying less to install the system and getting just as much return. But I'm telling you, that was a tough one to sell. They just didn't get it. But we ended up successfully doing them all, and all of them 10 kilowatt. And we made sure that part of the agreement was that they had to have a monitor at a point where anybody entering the facility, whether it was a school or the church, could see exactly what was happening in terms of the generation. And that was quite amazing, actually, because it brought a lot of questions. They could see how much had been generated by the hour, and then for the day, and then for the week and the month. And of course, the students soaked that right up, and they were tremendous advocates for it. But we also found that a lot of members in the congregation, once this was demonstrated, found the courage to do it on their own homes. And I see Jay is in here. So there he is, Jay Reesers from First Mennonite. He just recently put a system on his home as well. I've had one here since 2011. In 2006, I put in geothermal, solar hot water, and solar PV then in 2011. And these other installs were around, most of them happened during the year of 2012. And I think without exception, and all of these can be monitored online. So the members in the congregation, the congregation for the most part, I don't know if Herb Street has done this or not, but posted a link so that anybody that visited the church's website could actually see what their solar install was doing at any point at any time. And that's also a strong encouragement. I haven't seen anybody complain about any degradation yet, and over this 12 or 13 years that they've been in operation. And that goes for me as well. No maintenance whatsoever. And so it's just there quietly doing its thing. And with the tariff, we're a little better than halfway through our contract. So that'll run out at about 2032 in that neighborhood if I live that long. But that at that point it'll go down to net metering, which it sounds like many of you are functioning under right now as a net metering. Anyway, everybody that I know of is very happy with their install and is generating somewhere around, well, they paid off the systems within 5 years and are generating between 5,000 and 6,000 a year that can be applied to whatever they want to do within the work of the church. It could be turned back into being more progressive around, efficiency within the faith community or in the church itself, or it could be applied to any other program that they would like to do that for. Rockaway Mennonite Collegiate, by the way, started out with about a 35 panel system at that point. And just this year, last year actually finished installing 875 more panels with the Community Energy Development, which is a co-op, and that's enough to supply all the needs of the Rockaway Mennonite Collegiate on its annual energy use. So you can go to the rockaway.ca website, and I think you can see visibly a drone shot of practically every roof covered now with solar panels. And at the end of the term, end of the contract, it'll become the ownership of the school, and it'll just carry on with whatever terms are, with hydro at that point in time. But it won't be any additional cost to them that we know of, other than regular maintenance. I think that's about it. Just a lot of experience. Well, I should say that we had so much interest outside of Kitchener that wanted to do this because the word got around and they're all begging, can we get part of this $10,000 grant that the city's willing to offer? And we had to say no, but as crew, we volunteered to come and do a presentation to them, much the same as we were for the Kitchener or faith communities. And I think we inspired at least as many churches outside of Kitchener to do the same thing. And Herb Street, one of them, Elmira, Hillcrest, I've forgotten a lot of them. Breslau.
I have the list here, and I was going to point out that I think there are 11 churches in Southern Ontario with solar panels that are part of Mennonite Church Canada. So of our sister churches, sister and brother.
I think there's more than that. You haven't found them all, I don't think.
It's quite possible.
Mind you, a number of these were outside of the Mennonite community too. So it wasn't limited to the Mennonites. Word gets around. So and crew had a broad impact in terms of influence and with a good website and a lot of ability in forums and things for people to propagate ideas and share their experiences. That was very important. And with the library evenings that we had, we'd bring contractors in, whether it's for wind or solar or geothermal or whatever, and they'd be available to answer questions and also talk about cost and maintenance and all of the usual things, payback periods. And the installers that I should have mentioned that the churches that we worked with, we had 3 different solar contractors that we had put on a list that we knew would do almost identical work. We had a lot of faith in them. They could get quotes from all three, and they could choose the one they wanted, and they were basically in charge then of the step-by-step process, and signed off at the end being satisfied. And then we got the grant from the city after making a thorough report. So that worked out really well.
All right. Well, thank you, Glenn, for that story. I love the idea of people getting together to pool resources and experience and expertise and, you know, share the load of getting the communication out there and inspiring people together, and the funding cooperatively too. So there will be questions, no doubt, about Cru. Joanne, you are our last guest. Joanne Bender is sharing on behalf of Herb Street Mennonite Church. So go ahead, Joanne. Here's my question. Some of these solar installations are revenue generating for the church. Can you tell us how Herb Street uses the funds generated by their solar array, and maybe how the church decided on that practice? Go ahead.
Thank you, Sandy. And it's great to see so much interest all across Canada. Our project, our solar panel project, goes back to 2012, when the province of Ontario, and Glenn Woolner knows very much about this as well, being in Kitchener, the province of Ontario said that they would pay individuals or groups 80 cents per kilowatt hour of solar power generated. And this we saw as a revenue producing project for our congregation. We never thought of it as for our to support our electrical or our power needs in our own church. We thought of it as revenue, which we could then turn into mission project money. So we, a few people with vision started the idea. It went to church council. Church council thought it was a good idea. It went to the congregation, and it was approved in 2012 that we would install solar panels on our roof of our church on Herb Street in Waterloo. And we signed a contract with the province for 20 years, just like Glenn Woolner said. So it's until 2032 that we would get paid 80 cents per kilowatt hour. And we had to borrow money from our local credit union in order to do that. And our plan was to, first of all, pay back that loan with the money that the solar panels generated. And our treasurer made sure to clear that with the Council of Christian Churches of Canada to make sure that we were within Revenue Canada guidelines for charitable organizations like churches, so that we were not seen as taking in revenue for the running of our church. So once that was cleared, and the CCCC, Council of Canadian Christian Churches, said this is a very sound project, and they approved, then for the next 6 years, all the money that was generated from our solar panels went toward paying back our loan. And in 6 years, we had paid it back. So we started off in 2012, and by 2018, the loan was paid back. And from then on, the money that the solar panels were earning was available for projects that people within our congregation could apply for each year. And our church council designated certain guidelines around those projects. They did need to be something that had to do with the environment, something that would help our environment. They had to be, as I said, brought forward by members of our congregation. And of course, the solar panel maintenance had to come first and foremost. So last year we had to do some repairs on the solar panels up on the roof. So that came out of the funds that we had collected, but then there was still enough money to support other projects. So it's been very exciting to see some of the projects that have been supported by our solar panel funds. One of the main ones is Trees for Woolwich. And you can see these on our church website, Herb Street Mennonite Church. We do not have a a minute by minute indication of how much solar energy we're producing, as Glenn has for First Mennonite, but we do have a list of all the solar projects that we've funded. And one of the main ones has been Trees for Woolwich. Typically, applicants for the projects request around $3,000. So we've given $3,000 to Trees for Woolwich twice, and then another $2,000 another time. And there's another application this year for that project. Just in 2024, no, sorry, just in 2020 alone, they've planted 3,000 trees from the money that we donated. And those 3,000 trees captured 450 tons of carbon dioxide. They diverted 2.9 million liters of storm water. They absorbed 4.4 tons of pollutants from the air over the next 40 years. And if we looked at an 80-year time frame, we just exponentially multiplied those numbers. So this is really a very effective way to help our climate action and our environment. Another project that we've done in the past was planting trees in Haiti. So some of us in our congregation have been down to Haiti on a learning trip. We had connections with MCC Haiti, and they showed us their tree planting projects down there, which were absolutely amazing. They were creating agricultural land from what had been absolutely barren before by planting seedlings, which then grew into trees, which then draws water, which then can support agriculture. So we've supported that project in the past. We also this year have had an application for funding toward housing. And in Kitchener-Waterloo region, we have Beyond Housing, which is a Mennonite organization formerly called Menno Homes. And their initiative this year is to build a large housing complex. And so someone in our congregation has applied for a grant from our solar panel fund to contribute to this housing project. And as we all know, affordable housing is one of the most important things we can do for our environment and for our society. So those are just some of the examples of the projects that we've done. And we feel very excited to be able to fund projects of this nature using the revenue that came from our solar panel fund, which was envisioned by people 12 years ago and has stood us very well.
Thank you, Joanne. I just popped a link in the chat to that solar panel fund page from your website. There's some outlining of what the projects are there. Thank you. I would be excited too. That sounds amazing. Very, very cool. So listening to these 5 stories, you probably have lots of questions, and I have like so many thoughts. One is, it's obvious that depending on where you are and what the government is doing incentive-wise and what the weather is doing, or how much sun you get, and how affordable these things are, how much payback you can get. These are all really important factors in these decisions. And as we represent the nation, we all have different circumstances in which we're figuring this out. So I just want to open it up. First, if any panelist had a question that they really wanted to ask of another panelist, I'll give you a minute now to say your question quick, and then we're going to open it up to everyone else to ask questions. And you can write questions in the chat as well, folks, and I'll try to keep an eye on those as well. Any question, panelist to panelist, before we go?
Sandy,
Yeah.
it's Herb here, maybe
Okay.
more of a statement. What I really found interesting in the presentations, as you just said, across Canada is so different. The funding models are so different. Like you said, like 80 cents a kilowatt, man, that would be awesome. That's all I can say. Anyway,
really
just a
is.
statement, just a comment.
Oh, Herb, that was to kickstart it, to get it going.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have
0.8.
that kind of funding, but that would be amazing, yeah.
Yeah,
Might
we're
actually make
paying
some money.
0.82, but then people were paying, 50, 60,000 for a system. And, but it was dropping. I mean, it would go down a certain amount before they would change it again and then lower the tariff. And today, panels you can buy them at 1/5 of the cost we paid way back there.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
mind you, they're not built in Canada anymore. That's a big problem. But CED and VCT, the installer, which is they're joined at the hip, but they get theirs offshore from a reputable business that they have comfort in, and are building top quality panels. And believe it or not, that's overseas is just about the only place you can buy them now.
Yeah, that's correct.
Too bad.
All right, Peter, I saw your hand waving. Did you want to jump in with a
Oh,
question?
We got ours from Germany, our solar panels. Also, because we are considered to be commercial, Manitoba Hydro only pays us 3 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour.
Whoa, that's low.
So you're not on net metering.
And we have a bidirectional meter and that whatever excess power kilowatt hour goes into the grid. We cannot store any power. We can't have batteries.
Right, but do they pay you that 3 or 4 cents on what they pay you once you exceed your consumption? Is that how it works?
No, that's not how it works. It's just whatever goes into the church, whatever the church uses, which does not, whatever does not go into the grid, they pay us 3 cents or 3 or 4 cents, whatever.
Do they charge you 3 cents for whatever you consume?
No.
Okay,
They
okay.
charge us about 7 to 9 cents.
Oh, that's still pretty cheap compared to Alberta. Okay.
Yeah, it's all so new for Manitoba to have this. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with us. We're still working at it.
Yeah, but
Trying to convince these young guys who are running this program to how this all works.
it sounds okay though. It sounds like you're getting a bonus of 3 or 4 cents instead of equal in and out.
Yeah.
So
Well-
you're still on the winning side on that one.
No,
Oh, I think so.
not if they're paid, not if they have to pay 7 cents and they only get 3 cents for what they generate. Like it's, yeah, they're being shortchanged a bit, I think.
But whatever does not go into the grid, we get, that it saves us, 7 to 9 cents.
Yeah. And
Glenn,
any surplus is 3.
Joanne, go ahead.
yeah, Glenn, maybe you know the answer to this, but back in 2012, when our church signed that contract, that was a good thing. But if we had waited, that program at 80 cents per kilowatt hour would have been over. Is that right? Like if you started,
No, it kept going for quite a while.
did
But
it?
as I mentioned, as the price of the systems came down, like if you think of it this way, it was always designed to give a 10% return on your investment. Okay, so you invest this much, you get this much in return for what you've done. And as the cost of the system came down, they lowered the tariff, but the return remained 10%. You
Okay.
understand? Like, okay, if you're buying a product to put on your shelf, you're paying this much and you're charging the customer this much. But if you pay less, then you can reduce the price of the customer's cost
Mhm.
because your cost isn't as high. Okay, so that's how that was structured. And they were actually very good at what they were doing. But it was one of those things that people just couldn't get their head around. They thought if the tariff came down, they were actually getting less, and they weren't, because they weren't paying more for the system.
Yeah.
They're paying less for the system too.
So
Okay.
for a church to start now would still be a good idea.
Sure, it's based on net metering, and so you would basically you're not limited on the size of your system now. You could put on whatever your roof can handle, and then try to get as close to what your church uses in terms of electricity consumption, and maybe come out even if you hit the number right. But installers are really good at estimating exactly how much you'll generate in a year. Like it's not much of a guessing game. So they can predict what your return on your investment will be and how quickly it'll pay off. And you can get that information before you decide to go ahead. But
Alright,
I think
I'm
most
gonna-
of us don't do it just because of the money. We do it on principle, you know, that we're making a difference here.
Mhm.
And I want to say here for everybody that's out west, you know, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, more Saskatchewan and Alberta, you are the sunny and windy places here, you know, not Ontario. Right, Jay?
All right, I'm gonna jump in. We have a question in the chat from Jay Reeser. Jay says, I'm wondering if any of the churches presenting have done an energy audit to determine what their actual greenhouse gas emissions are.
First Mennonite Church in Edmonton did. What we did is, but we signed up. Any one of you can do it. You go through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager program that exists out there, and you sign up and you enter all of your energy consumption, whether it's electricity, gas, water, even water and sewer consumption. All of that goes into the program, and it calculates it, and it's free. So it's there's training sessions in there, and it's actually a pretty good program. So Energy Star Portfolio Manager program.
If somebody wants to look that up while we're chatting and put it in the chat, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll look it up and share it afterwards. Thanks for.
Okay.
For us in the Waterloo region here, we have something called REAP. And they'll do that for any institution as well as homeowners. And that's a very thorough analysis as well.
Right, that's helpful.
May I say something, Sandy?
Yeah,
Jay
for
here.
sure.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is a few years ago with my business interest, I did an energy audit and I was really surprised. Mostly because I had really high electricity bills and natural gas bills were not that high. So I was falsely thinking that, I really got to cut my electricity use. But really, it was my natural gas use that really made a big difference. If I'm actually trying to reduce my greenhouse gas emissions, for us here in Ontario, I really got to cut out natural gas. So I think like an energy audit will, for each of the churches, it actually shows you where you're actually making the emissions and where they're actually coming from. So I'm glad to hear that First Mennonite did that audit. So you know how many tons you're producing.
Herb,
Thanks.
I really liked your process and your report was amazing. Thank you.
All right, other questions? Just speak up or whatever, raise your hand if you want. You could just unmute and go ahead.
I sent the link in the chat, Sandy.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
to the login site. That just gets you quick, and then you can start hunting around and looking for it. It's actually pretty good.
Awesome. I'll include that in a post-event email as well for those who want it.
I'd
I
like
have a
to
question for.
mention something about visibility. Oh, am I interrupting somebody?
Hey, Peter, and then someone else said something and I didn't catch who it was. Do you want to just wave your hand so I know to call on you? That was Jay. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Peter.
That's one of the problems. Some people, even in our church, have never noticed our panels. And I noticed from Wildwood and Saskatoon, nobody knows that the panels are there. I suggested that we put up a sign in front of the doors saying something about this. The sun is our, but they didn't think it was religious enough. If I just said it, powered by the sun. That was supposed to be the message. So I'm going to work on that yet, to put a sign up front, because our neighbors have been very supportive. They see it and they think it's great. We also have a monitoring system called AP Systems, which tells us everything, what every panel is doing, how much it's producing, also how many trees it saved and how much water it's all there. It's really very, very, very good.
Thanks.
One thing that works well is, I think I mentioned it in my presentation, we have a screen right in the church lobby when you come in the foyer there, and anybody can walk up to it. They can see it. It's right front and center, and they can check out all the demands. That's one way to get the message out. And it's
Yeah.
on, it's real time all the time. It's there. It's Solar Edge is the one that we use. We've heard different names, but that's the one that we tend to use in Edmonton.
Yeah, that's great, Herb. When we were doing the crew installs with our faith communities, that was one of the requirements to be part of it. They had to have a nice sized monitor in public view. And you know, that was that really got people's attention, like, what is this and what's going on here?
Mhm.
And we had broken the panel out so they could actually see the installation on the rooftop. That school, or one of the schools, happened to be a flat roof, and you couldn't see it from the road. But if you came in, you saw this large screen then with a roofscape showing the panels and also the generation, and you couldn't miss it. You had to walk right into it when you came in, and you'd find a bunch always standing around looking at it, which is kind of cool.
Other questions?
Sandy, I'll just have a question for Herb. Herb,
Yeah.
I was impressed by you guys have 60 kilowatts on the roof, which is a lot of generation. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned you have, I think, pretty new furnaces, but would you not have excess capacity? Would you not be exporting more than you're using?
Under the table, that's the hope, right? Basically what we have to do here, we had to do, I think we heard one of the other presenters, I can't remember who it was, but ran into some difficulties with approvals, and I think it was Winnipeg Hydro or something. We kind of had the same thing. You cannot generate in Alberta, you cannot generate more than what your power demands have been. So we had the power demands for the last 5 years, and I had used those. And then, of course, we hit COVID, so we dipped down quite a bit. So we used
Okay.
that 5 years generation. That's what the solar panels were based on. And then on top of that, then we started adding in replacing high pressure sodium fixtures. We've replaced fluorescent bulbs. So we were putting in LED fixtures. So the intent is that overall, our overall demand will drop. So we'll be in a positive position all the time. That was our objective, as opposed to being behind. So we did the panels based on past demands. We got the micro generation approval, and then we went ahead with the panels, and then we've initiated what other improvements we can do to try to bring the overall environmental footprint down.
Okay, got it. I maybe missed that. It seemed like quite a large system, and I thought you might, just for lighting and so on, I thought you might be actually producing more than what you use.
We are right
and so I was
now.
wondering about, I was wondering, if you're producing more, would you consider using heat pumps to reduce your natural gas consumption?
The concern we had at the time when we did the economic analysis was the fact that the heat, doing a geothermal system was quite expensive, right? And we were always looking at the recovery time, like how many years does it take the cost recovery to bring it back? That we tried to be logical in our approach, so that we were being environmentally prudent in whatever decision we made, no matter what, not just to go with something that was topical. But the problem we had was the overall cost of geothermal was higher, and it was because of the power generation. But you're absolutely right. We did design our system such that we could double it if we ever got the
Oh, wow.
approvals. Like right now in Alberta, they don't allow you to do that. But if the situation changes, like it's like in Ontario, you can add whatever panels you want, but in Alberta you cannot. So you can only build the capacity that you're like in our case, the 5 year projection was that, like, what was the 5 year history? And so we have the capacity to double it. And when we do that, then Jay, absolutely right. That's when we could consider putting in heat pumps and then replace our natural gas. That's what we would
Great.
want to do
Yeah.
then. But right now we just can't do it.
That would be your biggest bang for the buck in terms of reducing greenhouse gases. But
Yeah.
I hope you can get them to. I'm
Actually,
pleased that you can add so much to it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
in
Well, solar
Alberta,
had a higher bang for the buck at the time. Anyway.
I heard another voice there. I
In,
couldn't quite-
in Alberta, we at Foothills, we've just replaced our furnaces with high efficiency furnaces. I looked into heat pumps, and in Alberta, there really isn't a benefit because, you know, even though we are far better with natural gas than coal for in terms of greenhouse gas emission, it still takes, you're only getting about, for the energy you burn in natural gas, you're really only getting about 35% of it back in electricity. So if it's being produced in that way, a heat pump does not give you a benefit in Alberta. And a lot of people who were putting in heat pumps were only putting them in because of the government grants, and it was giving them free air conditioning. So in researching it in Alberta, that hasn't been a benefit at all. In Manitoba, it is, because most of your power is coming from hydroelectric. So it does give you a greenhouse gas benefit, but it doesn't in Alberta.
Okay.
Daniel, did you consider geothermal?
We wouldn't have that capability. We don't have enough land area to put in underground facilities like that. We'd have to dig up all our parking lots and everything else and get city permits to do it. And by the time you've done that, you know, that would have to be a very long range project to begin with, not a short range.
Okay, you're talking about horizontal versus vertical. Vertical, you just go down. I've got 480-foot loops in my front yard within a 10 by 10 area.
Okay, yeah,
Foothills is a big church though, right?
Well, you can multiply that to whatever number
Yeah.
you need to meet the load.
Yeah, there's,
You've got a
but
port-
still, you know, we're in a city, there's water table issues, all sorts of things, so
Yeah, but water
it has to
tables are
work in the area where you
Yeah.
are.
just to add what Daniel was saying is, remember the numbers that I gave during my presentation, and it was something to the fact, exactly what you were saying, is the fact that we had a 50% reduction in carbon emissions if we went solar versus 21% reduction for geothermal, or 20% for high efficiency furnaces. So that, and hot water tank. So high efficiency furnaces and geothermal were almost equal, except geothermal was twice the price. That's why we ended up going with solar, because from an economic point of view, from a environmental impact. So what you're saying, Daniel, just confirmed with our analysis. Exactly the same.
And it raises the interesting, I mean, the question of what influences our final decisions. And there are factors that, that determine, sometimes it's finances, sometimes it's conviction, sometimes it's just the right number of people, and certainly the physical environment, the actual circumstance makes, can only do what you can do.
And the technology is always improving too.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Any other questions? I have a few, but I want to make sure that the group here has a chance to ask what they're asking. So if you haven't asked something yet, now's a chance. Comments are also welcome, doesn't have to be a question.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm John Gashel from Osler, Saskatchewan. And I'm just wondering if any of you have had to deal with resistance within the congregation regarding solar panels. Like as far as discussing the topic at all.
No, in First Mennonite in Edmonton was exact opposite. They're really enthusiastic about doing it. So it was buy-in right off the bat.
And I would ditto that for Wildwood. There was only enthusiasm for the project. it captures people's imagination, unlike LED light bulbs or an extra sweater. But of course, those are really the low-hanging fruit that can make the big difference, are, you know, very simple, mundane kinds of things. Solar is a bit sexier. It captures people's imagination more.
Yeah, does anyone who spoke up with this story, did any of you experience it? Herb Street or Fort Garry experience the resistance?
A little bit. What about the shingles? And actually it saves the shingles because they don't get all that heat. And of course the cost was something, but we had money, so that was not a problem.
Yeah.
But it's like a motherhood and issue, you know. How can you argue this? And it's, you know, when are we going to start making money? And that was not, we didn't even start talking about it being something that would make us money. We just wanted to save the planet.
Joanne, you were going to comment.
Well, back in 2012, when the idea was first floated to our congregation, the only objection was it's going to cost a lot of money to install. It was $71,000 to install these solar panels. But once a few people could see the long-term benefits, there was no problem. And it's been something that I think our congregation feels very good about now. We have a wide range of people in our congregation, young to old, lots of older people, and everybody's kind of forward thinking, and so feel good about it.
I'm curious if there are folks in the room who did not present, who are experiencing the conversation in their church not being as straightforward as some of these stories have been. And John, I get the sense that might be your experience. Are there others who find that the discussion is a little more fraught, a little more difficult? You may not want to out your congregation, I don't know, but we can speak generally.
Well, just a little bit of what I hear still from people is, yeah, they're going to last 10 or 15 years and then they're garbage.
Mhm.
It's not true. They're going to last 40 or 50 years with no maintenance. You know, there might be a micro inverter here or there that goes defective, but those are warranted for 20 years usually. So the first 20 years you shouldn't have any warranty issues, and they're guaranteed against degradation for at least 20. A lot of them are doing it for 35 years now. Part of the problem before was that nobody had panels long enough to find out how much they're actually going to degrade. And now they're still going, and degradation is minor. I haven't noticed any on mine yet, and they're like 13 years old. So, you know, that's encouraging.
I know that within the province, there's just not a lot of incentive for solar as there was in the past. We certainly didn't have the program that Ontario had or even has. And yet I think in Saskatchewan, I think it's almost up to 30% of our power comes from wind and solar now. And I know that they had planned to decommission the coal plants. And SaskPower was planning to do that. But even within this last year, they were instructed to start them up again, to start the coal plants up again, which doesn't make any sense at all. And you know, we should be, yeah, for sure, we should be putting up more solar. And I think it actually helps the government in terms of having solar arrays throughout the province. And I wish that, yeah, there was just more incentive that way on the government's part. I think it's good to provide good, clean energy, even if you're not making money, but I think we should be making money. You know.
Well, it's the cheapest energy source right now. And what's interesting in Ontario, when Ford got in, he canceled over 900 renewable energy projects, canceled them at great cost. And guess where they went? They went west.
Mm,
And I just read the other day that 90% of the new solar and wind that's occurring in Canada is happening in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Oh.
So interesting.
Yeah, the only thing is in Alberta, one of the things that we find in Alberta here is that there are some more regulations coming in with regards to where wind and solar can go, because you don't want to put it on the prime agricultural land and take up all the prime land. So put it more on marginal land. And so preserve the prime agricultural land for future generations. That's the one pushback that has occurred just in the last year in Alberta relative to the number of projects that could go out there. But the one challenge that you have for John, that maybe why they started up the coal plants, is that, I mean, everybody always was thinking, yeah, solar and wind is going to be the be all to end all. But, in the middle of winter when it's minus 35, guess what? It doesn't work. And then you got a foot of snow on your panels like we do, like we did this winter. They don't work. So you do need some form of backup. So, John, that could be where some of the resistance comes. But what's great about solar, and I agree with the comments that have been made, is that it supplements the demand during middle of the summer, when if people have air conditioning, like the comment was made down on Lethbridge and things like that. I mean, that's where you're offsetting. You can just maintain the existing power plants can be just at minimum, and therefore you're saving a lot of energy, whether it's coal, natural gas, or hydro or nuclear or whatever you're at. And you're doing it with something that's free. You're right. It's Glenn, it's free. So, but you do have to consider that in the wintertime, it doesn't work as well. That's the biggest challenge we have, and therefore you need duplicated power all the time, right? That's the big challenge we have.
The other offsetting one to that is wind is often there when the sun isn't, and that can balance to some degree. But I think if we look at the tensions in the world today and what really is at the center of that, energy still is, and that wind and solar and even storage is becoming not that prohibitive anymore, to help even, when we have loads and not, or supply and not. This can be done just about anywhere on the globe, and technology is advancing in very serious ways that we aren't hearing about. It's not out there in the public eye. And we won't know about it until it becomes viable and they'll be selling it. But it's nice to keep your ear on the rails and kind of feel it coming. And if you know where to probe and poke, you can find out what's going on and how great those advances are, even around EVs and batteries, and, how they're moving towards the less scarce metals and all that stuff for battery storage and lightweight and more range and all of that. It's coming, and to be encouraged. We're heading for a better place. And energy is not going to get more expensive. It's going the other way. It's getting cheaper all the time, as long as we focus on looking forward and innovation and invest in it, rather than resisting it and trying to hang on too much to what we've had, thinking that we won't have jobs in the future. That's quite the opposite. Renewable energy addresses that middle class job situation like nothing else does. Once you build it, you still have to look after it. And it needs skilled people to do that. And so there are many jobs that are surrounding that, even though the energy is generated is less expensive. So there's a lot happening, and it's encouraging, and we can be part of that.
Yeah, totally. There's one more question in the chat. And I have a little piece of trivia here from Trev Weitz in Calgary, who says right now 25% of Alberta's grid is supplied by wind energy. I did not know that. Thank you. The question in the chat is there any overlap or connection between churches doing solar panels and creation care? And maybe this brings us to a good place as we lean towards wrapping up this conversation. I would just invite, if anyone has a comment on what is the connection, and a short comment from our panelists or from others, what do you see? And maybe from someone who hasn't spoken up yet, what do you see as the connection between this solar panel projects and our care for creation in a broader sense? So if anyone has a word to send us off with on those connections, there's wisdom in this room.
Well, I think as Brenda was saying about the story behind Wildwood actually grew quite organically from a Creation Care Sunday school and Mennonite Church Canada materials, and so it came out of that interest in caring for this creation, this cosmos. And in Wildwood, and I hear other people have said this too, that these are, we have a number of allied kind of projects. At Wildwood, we have a community garden, you know, bike rack, and we did a complete LED conversion. All lights in Wildwood are LED. So there were a lot of things that were sort of allied, but they kind of grew organically, really before we even thought of solar panels.
Thank you. Another thing just to think about is that we've talked about the financial reasons for these choices and the benefits financially, but ultimately we're hoping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by reducing our energy needs from dirty grids. And it's a reason why in Manitoba, the conversation is a little quieter, because our grid feels cleaner. I know that it is a very complicated, not clean Manitoba Hydro. However, we have this sense that our grid is cleaner. And so I think it is, yeah, this ultimately we need to have less greenhouse gas emissions. And this is one way to move there. Any other? Go ahead, Brenda.
When Peter talked about being part of Mennonite Creation Care Network, it reminded me of my involvement probably around the same time. And sorry about that. Within the newsletter of that organization, I think it was Peter Sawatsky who was quoted about the reason for embracing solar panels. And if it wasn't you, I still shared the quote with a number of people I spoke to at the time when we were considering it. And the reason why we want to get solar panels is because it's the right thing to do. That's it.
Right
Was
on.
it you? Was it you, Peter?
Yes.
I listened.
Because everybody wants to know, why would you do this?
Nice.
Can I just say something yet? I would like to say that it's good technology, and you're harnessing energy. You're not necessarily burning something to create energy. You're harnessing the energy that's already there. And yeah, I think if we could have small micro solar setups all over the province, or on each home, that would be ideal. But I understand too that, yeah, you need an energy source to deal with low times. So yeah.
Done. I think this, I mean, there's never a good time to end, but I think what we've done here as we've wrapped this up is we've pulled up this tension between, there are many unresolved questions and tensions around these kinds of projects. And if we expanded the conversation much bigger, we would be asking ourselves questions about what do we do with the idea that we're growing our energy use all the time? And what about degrowth? And what about the struggles of green energy? And there are lots of questions. And what I find a lot of hope in is that we are people who are talking to each other and exploring ideas and listening to one another in hope and in community. So Glenn, you've got your hand up. One very quick comment, and then I'm going to wrap us up.
I just thought of something that comes up a lot, and that's about what do you do with all these panels when it comes down to their end of life? And there is industry now that's springing up to deal with it, and you can recover almost everything you need. Most of it is glass. Okay, so that can be reused, and there's very little of rare metals in a panel. But you can recycle 98% of a panel. The problem is we don't have too many expired panels yet to make it worthwhile. Really, I mean, when you have a life expectancy like that, even though we're putting major installs out there, huge solar farms and everything like that, they're not dying. So when they will, and when they do start expiring or new panels come along and they need to be recycled, the industry is already starting to rise to the occasion. And maybe we have to stockpile them until the time comes that that's easily done. But yes, business will be there when the opportunity is there and money's to be made, and it will be there.
Maybe I can add to Glenn's. It's actually, I've heard it's higher recovery. It's up 98, 99%. And you're
Right.
right, they are stockpiling them already. They're in some places, they are doing that. And they're recovering most of it. So it's, but I think the one message, which is what we did, is make sure that you don't try to go on the cheap. Make sure that you get a proper panel, which is what we did. We got commercial grade. Make sure you investigate the options that are there so that you do get a longer life panel, because you're being, for the cost difference, which it was insignificant, like 10%, you're getting something, like we've said before, lasts minimum 35 years before any degradation really starts showing up. That's the real message, is do it right. Don't do it on the cheap.
All right. Good word. Okay, I am going to wrap us up here. What a great time it has been together. I have some announcements and comments, so have a pen ready. First thing, if you want to receive a follow-up email from me with these resources that we've talked about today and a few other things, I've actually collected some articles, and you haven't been in email contact with me, some of you have, some of you haven't. If you haven't, please put your email address in the chat. You can send it privately to me, just me, or send it to everyone if you want everyone to have it. But if you haven't talked with me and I don't have your name on a list, if you're my dad, you don't need to send me your email address, for example. Go ahead and put that in the chat, and then I'll grab those email addresses after we're finished. And yeah, my dad is here. And there he is. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Ron.
Love that. So yeah, put your email address in there if you want me to have it, or send it to me some other way. And I also am taking the liberty of sending emails to people like you who have been to workshops like this one when other workshops come up. So be warned, you might get another email with another invitation soon. A couple of things, I would also love for you to connect with each other. So if you want this group, anyone in this group, to be able to contact you, you could put your email in the chat, and then anyone who wants it can grab it. I'm going to leave that to you, or you can contact me afterwards and say, I really want to talk to so-and-so. There are a couple things just to quickly mention. Mennonite Church Canada, as most of you will know, has emissions reduction grants. We've had these grants. This program has been implemented now for 2 years. 15 Mennonite Church Canada churches have received grants or are in the process of doing projects in which for which they've been approved for grants. And we will have another round of applications open this coming May. So in May, the new applications will be out and they are due back in September. So you have a lot of time to consider any emissions reduction project with your congregation. That will be on the Mennonite Church Canada website, and there will be some buzz around that as we get close to the launch of that program, but watch for it. Also, over the last few years, we recorded a handful of webinars and conversations like this one. You can find them on Common Word, and I will send a link to some of those conversations. But if you look at Common Word under energy efficient faith buildings, you'll find some of those conversations as well, if you're interested in what we've talked about in the past. And just to say, our buildings are not our whole focus. As I mentioned at the beginning, this work fits into the big picture of what we are doing in faithful response to the intersecting crises that are facing all of us, all of creation right now. If we are to respond with strength and unity, if we are to do justice and walk humbly, we need to know each other, and we need to be ready to act, and we need to be built up as a people so we can do that with unity. So I want to just mention to you that Mennonite Church Canada has its annual nationwide gathering this summer in Kitchener, and there are events. There's an under 30 event for folks under 30. There's a main event, which is the mainstream. The under 30 group will be part of that and have some extra events. There's a youth event. And together with my colleague, Jonathan Neufeld, who is the Indigenous Relations Coordinator, the two of us are planning a resource day at the beginning of the delegate sessions this summer, where we will be exploring how we can do our justice work more interculturally. So exploring the intersection of climate, Christian care, Indigenous relations, and other justice issues, and how we can do that work with more integrity as an intercultural church. We are a family of worshiping communities, and the local church where you are is the place where formation happens. That's the place where we are shaped into people who can respond to God's call to care for creation. So I invite you to watch your email, watch the church newsletters for an Earth Month package, which will have some ideas for Earth Month, which is April, for ways that you can raise this conversation in your congregation to support your formation efforts this spring. We also recognize that as much as our actions at home and in our communities matter, we also have the potential and responsibility to shape the direction and actions of our leaders and our governments. So I will share a link in this follow-up email with you to Citizens for Public Justice, which is currently about to launch a campaign called Give It Up for the Earth. It's a Lenten campaign in which they invite individuals and congregations and groups to, well, there are three things. One of them is signing a letter to the federal government about the government's policies around climate action and emissions. And there are a couple other things in there that are well worth checking out. Also encourage you to check out MCC's Climate Action for Peace resources, where there are places to write letters to lawmakers nationally and internationally about climate policy. So please check those things out. I'll include those links in my follow-up note. Those are my announcements. I would like to close with a blessing of the buildings. This was written by Christy Dagenhart. She shared this prayer with us last year at our Energy Efficient Faith Buildings Part 2 conversation, which you can find a recording of on Common Word. Christy wrote this prayer and I just love it. And so this is how we will close today. May God bless our various spaces, from roofs to floors, peaks and basements, from wall to wall, doors and windows. May God bless our communities, our committees and researchers, our dreamers and question askers, our grant writers and decision makers. May we be good stewards of our resources, our buildings, our finances. May we honor our Creator and our Mother Earth in our conversation, our relationships, our decisions. May we do all of this with gratitude and joy. Amen. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And I look forward to connecting with many of you, all of you again. Thank you so much and have a great night. And special thanks to our panelists.
Thank you, Sandy.
All right, take care. Thank you so much.
Sandy. Well done.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Andy.